And we are live, guys. What is going on? Peace, love, and grace to everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Mooniverse. I want to say gratitude to the Most High, give gratitude to the Most High, gratitude to my ancestors, to be able to be here today, to open this space, to share it with you, to share it with special guests. Gratitude to just to be here, just for life to be here. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you so much, Spirit. I'm extremely, extremely grateful. Welcome to the Mooniverse, guys. So for those of you who are just joining us today for the first time on the Mooniverse, my name is Moonfeather, and I created this space to share my gifts. An intuitive tarot reader. I just out there, just sharing my gifts. Spirit put it in my heart about a year ago, and it's been a wonderful journey. It really has been, and little did I know I was going to come across such a beautiful community of entities, blessed entities, like my special guest today, and it's been wonderful. These connections have been wonderful, and I've been opening up my space here on the Mooniverse more to bring, my spiritual family here, because everyone has a wonderful, wonderful story and journey to tell. And today, I wanted to talk about and just open up the floor. Franklin and I were talking about this earlier, and he had actually suggested it because he has like all these wonderful, things going on spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and about our spiritual journey and what it entails, like the beautiful aspect of it, the scary aspect of it, but without further ado, I would love to introduce Franklin. Not only he is a spiritual and wise shaman, he's a therapist, he's a musician, he's also a devoted father, a beautiful friend to so many, especially myself. He radiates so much warmth, so much compassion, and his insights to the spiritual realm really is super profound, very transformative. I invited him here today to talk about the different facets of spiritual awakening and how it's different for everyone. And but yes, welcome, Franklin. It is truly an honor to have you here to join me today to share this space. Thank you so much. How are you, my friend?
I am very well, and the honor is mine. And it's lovely to see you. And you look so well and radiant. And
Thank you.
wow,
Thank you.
thank you for that amazing introduction. I don't know if I can live up to all of that, but thank you nonetheless. I'll try. It's really lovely to be here, and I look forward to rolling with you.
Oh my goodness. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Franklin. So I do have a very small community, and I call them my later gators because if they don't, attend my lives, they do always come in later. A lot of them are from TikTok, some of them are from Instagram. Can you please just introduce yourself to them and give them just a little bit of background, because I know there's a lot, but just introduce yourself and what is it that you and who is Franklin the shaman? Which is very deep.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it succinct and short. Well, I'm known as the Bush Whisperer on the web,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
it's just what I do. I'm a shaman. I it started in the bottom of a pool when I was little, when I drowned, and from there, I was approached by people when I was a little boy, because I sort of reawoken when I was 12, and from there, training in a number of disciplines, starting with Rosicrucian and Masons taking me under their wing and sort of guiding me to their libraries and knowledge lectures. And so it's always been a part of my life. And then I got to the point where I felt like everything was just too much in the head and I had to go on an incredible journey, and India was calling me, and that's what I did for the next couple of decades. And so I'm a shaman. That's what I do. And I do a broad range of shamanic services. And there's not much more to say about me.
Well, there is much more, but I think we met about a year ago, right, Franklin?
I think it's more than a year ago. I would place it as almost, and this is going to sound incredible, but I would say it's more than 1.5 years ago.
Yeah, right. I just that the time passes by so fast, so fast.
Could even be on 1 year and 7 months. In fact, it was on the Ronan show.
That's right. That's right. Shout out to Ronan.
Ronan.
Yes.
Ronan.
Yeah, shout out to Ronan. He definitely made the connection between us, and you have been such a beautiful blessing to me since, for sure.
Yeah, I want to say it could have been as early as March, April.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah,
Like
for sure.
Year and whatever that is.
Yeah, and that's exact. That around that time is where you started the round table, where you got the like the inspiration, right? When we had like that connection with a particular circle of friends, where you started the round table.
Exactly. You were a big part of the inspiration as well. In fact, you drew the logo, the picture, the beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Well, put it together, made it, created
I
it.
forget about that sometimes.
Yeah. That's Moonfeather's handiwork. And actually, I had started just a while before that. I think that's how Ronan discovered me. Was I had seen something on the web where they were talking about astral and etheric being synonyms for each other. And I was just like, no. So I had to set the record straight, and setting the record straight turned into 108 lectures.
Oh my goodness. It really, I love it.
And it just never, and then while I was doing that, I was like, wow, there's all these really cool people. We should have a discussion and
Yes,
have a proper, like,
definitely.
big space. And so that's sort of how it organically came together. And obviously,
That's like the best way.
Yeah. Ronan was a big part of bringing a lot of people together. I think people don't give Ronan the credit because he's been doing it a long time.
Yes, definitely, for sure. He's like so many connections. He's brought together. Because we do share, guys. We do share a Telegram on the side where we all talk and everything. But it's Ronan definitely has been a huge part in making a lot of connections between us, like within the close group. So for sure, the DeFi God. I call him the DeFi God, because he's all into that stuff. So shout out to Ronan for sure.
Yeah, Ronan's a giggle per minute. On top of all of that, he
He
brings
is.
some really cool information onto the table or onto the space wherever he is. But he does it with such panache that you can't help having a giggle. So yeah, shout out to him. And
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
noticed how your show's been doing so well. It's really lovely to see. And obviously, the psychic reality is very close to you because this is something which has been a part of your life for a long time. And so it's sort of, I'm surprised it took us this long.
Definitely, for sure. Everything in divine timing, right, Franklin? I'm so glad that you brought that up because it kind of all happened simultaneously, right? Spirit, me coming into like this new spiritual journey, starting the Mooniverse, meeting you, having these connections, meeting other, people in the spiritual community that we're in, and building little by little. And so it's like I look at the Mooniverse, and it's like like a log, like a journal, like a digital journal. You know, I say, oh, I put this out for posterity, and I pray that my children and my grandchildren, and I look at it bigger, and I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, so if there's days that I don't feel like getting on, or I just kind of like, no, you know, this is much bigger than me, you know, and it's reason why I'm opening up the space more. You know, it's also a way, not only does it help me build, right, and this is the topic of today's live, is our spiritual journey, right? Not only is it helping me as far as, you know, my journey spiritually, but also mentally, emotionally, because I do come, I have, and I've expressed this to you, how I do have like huge social, or had, or working through social anxiety, you know, and it was brought on through a lot of domestic abuse that I had in the past. And this is also a way that spirit has helped me to really fight through that and work through that. And it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. And you know, when I see the shows, you know, sometimes I kind of like, you know, afterwards, because it's like the walls close in on me after every time I get on or I get off, and I think about it, you know, and I was like, no, it's okay, you're fine, you know. And then I get wonderful support from you, from everyone else that watches the show, and then it just really helps me. So it's the energy is very reciprocal. You know, you guys probably don't even know, but you help me so much. Like when you support me, or you come on the show, and or you know, you share, or you like, or stuff like that, it really does help me in my own spiritual journey, you know. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to share so many experiences and stories that people, you know, share with me on the side, and it's amazing. The support is amazing, for sure.
Shall we dive in the deep end?
Yes, yes.
Like
For sure.
spiritual.
So yes, absolutely. So um with my experience, when I come across particular people, right, you always shine like a particular light when you are on a spiritual journey, right? And it draws, like people are just drawn to you. And I do come across a lot of people who are still trying to figure out, or don't even know, you know, what a spiritual awakening is. And to me, that's like I can't understand that sometimes, you know, like how is it that you never had like a spiritual experience, or whatever the case is, you know. But when we get into conversations, it's, you know, I just love it when their eyes just light up, because then people really start making connections, you know. And I know there's a lot of misconceptions too about spiritual awakenings, right? Like, oh, is it just a one-time event? No, it's not. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean being perfect either. Actually, it's quite contrary. You find out that you're not perfect, and you have a lot of work to do. You know what I'm saying? Um, and that it's, oh, and this part, like it's always blissful. It's not. It's the most chaotic time I've ever gone through while doing this spiritual work, you know? So, do you come across a lot of people that have like these misconceptions of spiritual wake? Is that like a big thing? You know, when you come across people, when they ask you questions or they're seeking advice, do you feel like they're like sort of like in a box in a sense?
I always come back to, and yes, I do find that actually, I always come back to this idea that no, it's all those self-help writers, um, writing with broken typewriters, you know, and that's how I see it, because I look at it from this perspective, and I'm gonna go out on a wing here. So, you know, the D Lama. I'm not going to say the whole word just to keep it smooth and keep it flowing. But there are certain people that have been given the platform and the stage by the international media and the printing press corporations, you know, those editorial companies that basically control which books get pressed and which ones get to go bestseller. And so
Mhm.
it seems like there's the same narrative being sold to the world over and over and over again. And it's like I don't know, it came out in a song once that you might have like 95% of the facts, and just that small 5% is all it takes to make everything turn nasty. You know, you're building
Mm.
a house and you got 95% of it right. You just, unfortunately, the walls weren't straight and they were out by like a couple of degrees. And basically, the house is going to collapse. You know, it
And
doesn't take
sometimes the
much.
foundation, sometimes that small percentage is the foundation.
Yes, exactly. Just the small mistake in the foundation can cause the whole house to go higgledy-piggledy, and it's no longer viable. I think this is what we're sitting with, is that there are these unfinished projects. People have put these books out there, and they're all harping the same story. And unfortunately, they've got us thinking in terms of this dialectic of above, up there spirituality, that we're not looking into the earth and looking into the animals and the people's eyes and going, you know what? This is the spiritual experience right here. We're having it. It's not somewhere else. Although there are other aspects of what we have here that we're not aware of.
Mhm.
And we could consider that and call it somewhere else, but it's not actually somewhere else. It's all happening here. It's just we have a limited scope of perception and
Right.
awareness.
Exactly. No, that's beautiful, because that's kind of where I started, my own spiritual awakening. It's the external versus the internal, right? When I came, you know, being brought up in the Catholic religion, we know that religion, everything is external. Look, just as you said, looking up at the sky, your sky daddy, everything is external, you know. And then when spirit was bringing me onto my own journey, like, that doesn't that doesn't exist right now. It's all within you, and breaking out of that, that brainwashing, that programming, that is the most difficult. That cognitive dissonance is very difficult to break out of, and that's what I see so much of now, of course, because it's like you broke away from the programming, and along with that, right? And this is why I said that there's a lot of misconceptions. People think of like spirituality is like, oh, everything's so blissful and wonderful and stuff. It does get to that at some point, but in the beginning, oh, breaking away from that program, it is so painful. It's excruciating. I remember when I went to, like, I physically got sick, and that's part of this whole spiritual awakening, this spectacular ascension that I've been calling that lately, the spectacular ascension, but everything else in between. And that's what I wanted to touch on, because people, a lot of the times, we know that when we have the spiritual awakening, there's a falling away, friends fall away, family falls away, the life as you know it falls away. And it's very painful. It's very painful on the human body. It's very painful on the mind, you know. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
I think, when we're looking at the pain phenomenon, and that's very interesting, we've been taught to relate life to what we want.
Mhm.
And because what we want is what we desire, we live so much in our own personal desire bodies that anything that is contrary to our own personal desires, we feel as uncomfortable. And in a high degree of that, it's pain. And a
Mhm.
big part of the spiritual awakening is the fact that we've got to realize how we've been using our desires for ill. We haven't been using our desires in the best way that it can be used. So we then have to go contrary to our own desires. And I think that is the fundamental pain, because everything that we thought we wanted was for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
And then we start recognizing, you know, what is it that I really want? And then we start realizing that everything that we want is to try and fill a gap. And that gap has been put there by the conditioning and the brainwashing of this world. I mean, let's face it, hey, the media has corrupted our minds. Hollywood, Bollywood, all the different forms of media, self-help bookshelf is
Right,
done, but it's
right.
done harm. I want to get into the crystals, for example. I don't like the way crystals have been represented, and every single book says the same thing about crystals, and I don't agree. I just don't agree. I'm like, who wrote the first book on crystals that everybody else is copying from? Because it's not necessarily very comprehensive from my perspective, and a lot of it I question as being, is there a psyops campaign behind a lot of the spiritual information that's been put out there in order to give us so much, but keep us from the real nitty gritty? Like you say, like getting our hands dirty, chopping wood, carrying water. Spirituality has been painted like something out there. Love. Look what Hollywood did with love. It's turned love into this giddy little feeling that you get, and this rush towards another person, and it's supposed to just be all airy fairy when actually it's hard work. It's painful, it's gritty. You've got to make sacrifices. You've got to not be selfish. You've got to be the opposite
Right.
of what you want. You've got to think about the other person's feelings and the other person's desires as much as yours, which, if you think about it, is sort of painful in a sense, because it means I can't just be my greedy old self. And we've been trained to be greedy old selves because it's what drives consumerism.
My goodness. I'm so glad that you brought that up because about, Hollywood's perception, what the news puts out there, which, it's a whole, of course, it's a whole psyop program. And to think, when I was growing up, TV was a huge thing. We loved the celebrities. We followed them, and if you weren't raised by your parents, then you were raised by celebrities, and that's a huge problem in our generation today. Which is why so many children, uh, depending the decade you're talking about, so many children that were not guided, and given that nurturing spirituality, through their parents or through a loved one, were all lost to the propaganda of news and Hollywood and all of that, which is the reason why a lot of us have gone through a lot of trauma on top of that, you know? So when you think about that, like, oh my gosh, there's like a huge generation of children that are out there, kids that are out there that are being raised by TV and celebrity, and especially now with internet where everything is accessible, you know? So it's really a huge campaign as well. That's another how would I say
Psyop bubble.
another I'm sorry?
Another psyop bubble.
Yes, there you go. Thank you. Another psyop bubble. I love that. Another psyop bubble to prevent people from actually waking up, especially if they could get to the kids at a young age.
My boy's 8 years old, and I'm watching this and I'm experiencing
Josh,
this.
shout out to Josh.
Yeah, and he's been watching Garfield now, and I'm like, yeah, Garfield's pretty funny, but it doesn't matter what he watches, and you can't just say to him, well, you can't watch anything, because all the other children are. So it's a tough
Yeah.
decision being a parent, because you can't just say no, because
Mhm.
then they are going to resent it, and they're going to want to do it behind your back, and they're going to want to make up for lost time at a later stage. So it's like it's a very touchy thing. And I remember when I was young, so I drowned at age 3, and after that, my extrasensory perception went off the charts, and people got scared of me to the point where they called me a devil's child, and I wasn't allowed to play with other children. And you talk about Catholicism. I was actually, the first baptism was Catholic. So I was originally a Catholic, and I was what do you call it? Exercised at least half a dozen times by Catholic priests. different ones. All the exorcists around Cape Town. My dad somehow went to them and brought them to our home and had me exercised many times, because even if you're not being directly psyopsed by the celebrities, all the adults around you have been. So
Exactly.
it's a runoff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought that up when you said you were considered as a devil's child, because often spiritual awakening is mistaken for demon possession or mental illness.
I think there's a lot to unpack with that as well, because of the psychic nature of the spiritual awakening.
Right.
And our worldview doesn't really allow for that in the
That's right.
conventional sense that everybody's been sold in schools. I mean, and let's face it, a school is a school of fish, and like which way the fish goes, that's the way you go, right? That's what a
Mm-hmm.
school does. It's not about learning, it's about teaching you to do what everybody else does. So to think with group consciousness and lose your individuality, and where spirituality is the exact opposite of actually taking complete personal responsibility for your thoughts, for one's actions, and starting to make conscious choices about what I want to do with my life, where I want to be, and what do I want to achieve in life. Where normally people think they're making the decision, but they're not. Because deep down, what they're doing is, what would other people think is great? How can I get other people to think highly of me? Right? A lot of people go and get degrees because that's what everybody else expects of me. If I don't do it, I'm a failure. So they go and get a
The
degree in a
ego.
job they don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that's
then
the
you're
ego.
stuck.
That's one thing that you got to learn when you're in the spiritual, awakening or the spiritual journey. You have to learn to really do away with the ego. You listen, and I've said before, not that there's anything wrong with the ego, because the ego does serve its purpose for here in the 3D, so you learn how to manage it, but then at the same time, you can't let it spill over into, you know, into, like you were just saying, oh, I want to look a certain way. I want to, I want to be, thought of in a certain way while I'm on this spiritual journey.
Yeah. And I think a big part of what is um, misconceived in spirituality is like everybody's interested in the psychic development.
Mhm.
Everybody's interested in the powers, which are a part of the developmental curve, I think, and it's a natural part of the program. But people aren't really paying the real attention to what's, in my opinion and from my perspective, really, really fundamentally important, and that is the emotional body. Because
Mhm.
we've been taught that the emotional body is one thing, but from my experience, the emotional body is, the astral body is a highly spiritual aspect of our consciousness that has been mistaken. And so we have these feelings, and everybody mistakes feelings for emotions, where feelings are what we make out of emotions.
That's
One
right.
can have an emotion, but the feeling is how we decide to color it.
Mhm.
So the same emotion that brings tears to my eyes, I can see that as a sorrowful insight into the nature of being, or I can see that as, I'm not good enough. Yeah, you know,
Mhm.
it's the same emotion, just two different ways that it's felt. And the one is felt on an embrace the all expansive way of experiencing emotion. And the other one is a contractive, Saturnial way of contracting with the emotion and saying, okay, this emotion must mean this. I think we apply too much meaning to our emotions instead of just feeling them.
Ooh, I like that. I like
Yeah.
that.
And when we apply too much emotion, meaning to our emotions, we get stuck in the feeling of the implications, because we feel the implications of the meanings that we apply to the emotions, and we call these the feelings. And we don't realize that, like, the emotion is just a state of vibrational connectivity like an acoustic field that connects everything to everything else, because everything is essentially just this vibrational field.
Right.
Everything's resonant.
That's I'm glad that you brought that up, because I just saw a video. I can't give a reference. I just, it's just one of these videos that just comes across my feed, where they had interviewed this neurosurgeon. He's dedicated his entire life, like decades, on the study of the brain, and and everything thereof. And they had asked them, like, what would be your number one advice, to people when it comes to, let's, like, like health and mental health, right? He said, above all, he said, regulate your emotions. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. Because when we're on just regular living in this 3D, being who we are and stuff. And I remember there's this one quote that I had learned when I was on this journey, is like, or when I was breaking away from Christianity, Catholicism, all of that. And they said, like, 99%, right? When I was in Christianity and all of that stuff, they said that 99% of Christianity is, um, is like your reaction to things, your emotion, like your emotional reaction to things. And that just made me kind of like think about it on a broader aspect. I was like, you know what, you're right. A lot of the times it's because of the ego. When something approaches me, a particular situation, and I feel that it's triggering, or whatever the case is, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to really take that step back and remove your emotion from the situation and really think of, hey, where is this really coming from? And then you think deeper, why is it triggering me? So that's part of also, being on this spiritual journey, is, if you're ever triggered with any situation, it's really going within, and regulating this emotion, feeling it, going not around it, but going through whatever it is that you're feeling, to come out on the other side and hopefully have a better outlook on yourself and whatever you're presented with.
I really like that. And Ronan's going to love this. Regal 8. Right. So an 8 is the power of Saturn, which is essentially an element of control. Like our
Mhm.
Saturnial nature is what we, when we control things, and we compress things and create a contract of control over a dynamic, and that's the 8. And
Mhm.
what we control is what we ate, and that what we
Ooh,
ate becomes the structure of our body. And
right.
it's an infinite loop of two circles touching, macrocosm and microcosm, the inner reflecting on the outside what's inside, and on the inside what's outside. And then the regal makes me think of kings and queens sitting on a throne. And so
Mm,
there's something quite powerful about sitting on a throne and observing emotions, and not allowing them to take, not allowing them to move us through a state of feeling, but just being aware of the emotions. And I think there's something quite powerful in that sort of, if we visualize ourselves sitting on a throne, does the king and the queen jump off the throne to do things? No, they don't.
no, they don't. That's right.
They just sit on the throne and they observe, and their natural systems take care of everything, right? Like, we don't have to do anything about these emotions, because we have subconscious forces that will take care of it for us. All we need to do is be aware,
Right.
observe.
Exactly. I mean, I guess that would definitely be like the ultimate state, right? To achieve, right? That, just as you said, as you're, a king or a queen that is on a throne, to be able to rule, or at least, truthfully, right? And that's that awareness. Because right, in order for you to be aware of the situation, of yourself, of what's going on internally as well as externally, you could only deal with truth, with justfully, with what you see or what's presented, you know.
Yeah, sort of like the word aware says, is like to be aware. Present. Where am I? I'm present. This is where I am. We
Right,
tend to go off in
exactly.
our minds, you know, into the future, don't we? I think that's part of the big problem. We either live in the future or the past. We don't spend enough time just being here, being present, and that's being truly aware.
That's very difficult. That's very difficult. I learned that when I first started meditation. When I had to control, which I didn't even know, like, listen, you need to control your emotions. So you need to control what's going on, the chaos that's going out internally as well as externally. You have to start meditating. Oh my gosh. That is not an easy thing, especially somebody with my mind, you know? Um, and I think that's kind of really like maybe the first step, you know, that people automatically turn to when they want to really start, expanding on their spirituality or learning about themselves, or connecting, with their higher self is meditation. So much is, my goodness, you just on meditation alone, you learn so much about yourself, um who you are and who you're not, you know.
Yeah, I think that you're right. That is definitely the major turning point in anyone's life when they start applying themselves to that. Like last night, my little boy Josh wanted to go to the penguin sanctuary, and I was like, "Ooh, this is cheeky. It's just about bedtime, and now he wants to go for a night walk, and there's no lights." So I was like, "Okay." I like the idea of him walking in the total pitch dark.
Mm,
Um, Good for him. Like face your fear. Yeah, I like this. You want to be an alpha male? This is how it's done. You're not going to be an
okay,
alpha male
right,
wearing your
right.
wristbands. Do you know what I mean? Like, man up. And so we went to the beach first, and I had to a number of times say to him, Josh, I just want to listen to the sea.
Oh, that's so beautiful, especially at night, right?
Yeah, wow. And I was on a
It's
rock.
on a different frequency. Go ahead.
You're right. The frequency, I could hear the water slapping the rock. It's like the acoustics. Oh, so that I think we've been sold a lot of things of meditation, and we don't realize we did it when we were kids.
Ooh, when we would oh well, I liken it to when I was younger. I had a huge imagination. I would zone out so much out of this world, and I'd be more in my, in my worlds of creation when I would be imagining things. Is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, there's many aspects to it. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
like when we go back to younger and younger, there's less construct, and like you say, there's that phase like when we're like 4 or 5 years old, when we're going off. My dad used to see me standing in front of the window, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm thinking." And he used to laugh. He used to say, a little philosophy. He says, "You've been staring there for three
Right.
hours." I say, "Yeah, I'm thinking that." Like stare out of the window and just think. And it was fun to just think, you know. And you could
Yeah.
stand in a stationary spot and just look at the sky and just think. And there was something quite therapeutic about that, allowing the mind to just work without a goal. We were so goal orientated. I mean, don't get me wrong, goals are valuable for achieving material ends. Goals work. You want to make money
Mhm.
to feed the kids, or to do whatever you need to do in the physical plane. Goals goals work. But when
Right.
it comes to the spiritual, it's the opposite. It's doing for the sake of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Exactly.
that's what holds us back from meditation in this Western lifestyle, because we don't know how to do just for the sake of doing.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. It's now when I look back at it and I reflect about, right, what you were just touching on when we were children. I don't know if it's just me. See, this is why I say, um everybody's walk, through life, whether you're on a spiritual journey or not, it's all unique to everyone, right? So growing up, I remember certain things in my life, but a lot of it's a freaking blank. And I know it's deep within my subconscious. Like if I would be able to tap into my subconscious, I would be able to remember every moment of my life, from the time that I was born until now, but I don't know. I just think now, like when I ponder about these things, I think I was really in that world of thought when I was younger, that it would take me from here. But and then a lot of people that have gone through big traumatic experiences, when they were younger, it's like that's the psychological part of the mind and how it works. It removes you from a particular situation, a very traumatic situation, and it removes you. And but then it's like, okay, so then what takes its place? And that's a lot of how would I say, that's a lot to be able to really confront, when doing the real healing, the real uh trauma healing, in order to be able to get or level up in this spiritual journey.
Yeah, that was a huge part of it for me. Um, so I was quite lucky that um, when my training started first, it was
Mhm.
zazen with a Japanese master who was like a real shihan, who was a real master.
Oh
So
my God, that's so
he had
amazing.
developed zazen to the point that he could manipulate matter with his thoughts. So that's like, a high level of mastery. So I was really honored to get that person to pull me aside and say, come and sit with the senseis and meditate. And I was like this junior grade little kid, and all the other children were like jealous, like, why do you get to go to that special class for all the senseis? Like, what are you doing there? I was like, I don't know, I'm just sitting there learning to breathe and meditate. And but and then after then I met Masons, and the first thing they said to me is, and I'll never forget it, they sort of approached me and they were like, okay, you've got this materializing body type that you've got to learn to control, or it's going to create havoc in your life. And I was like, all right. And they said, the first thing you want to learn is your cognizance of mind, and develop your timeline memory. And so the most basic exercise is the daily review. And it is probably the most powerful spiritual training that there is, where every day you sit down at the end of your day and you move backwards through your memory till you opened your eyes in the morning. And you do that every day. And every 3 months, you do a big one for the last 3 months,
Really?
every season. And then
Oh
every
my
year,
God,
you do a big one for the whole year. And it takes hours. Then,
that's
but it starts
wild.
with every day doing a daily one, right? Then you can do a lunar one as well. Like at different times, I did different aspects of the training. And then you learn to move sequentially through your memory. And then you find blockages in your memory and you go, hey, whoa, what? So then where was I? So then you literally go back to the geography of where you were. and I remember this place. I saw this place as a child. So you go and sit on the place that still stirs your memory, and you sit there and you meditate and you absorb your memories from the earth, because the memories,
Wow.
yeah, we think they're living in our heads. Yeah, memories are recorded in our head, but the actual experience is bound in the earth.
Yes.
And so we
Oh,
can,
that's transfer. That's transfer of energy.
yeah, objects from our childhood, places
Right.
where we were, favorite swings, any place where you felt really happy and like together. And that's where you go, and you literally siphon the memories from that place, and you meditate there, and then suddenly all the memories come flooding back. And then you
Wow.
build the timeline, like carefully, consciously move through its stage, and then you start remembering, oh yes, that happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And bit by bit the timeline builds up, and we can go further back and further back and further back and further back. And I mean, I imagine we can go to the birth. I haven't gone to the birth myself, but I've got a very strong timeline memory, and I can remember a little while after I was born. And it gets interesting. When we were born as children, like when we are a few weeks old, we don't think, we don't have our own thoughts at all. We feel like an elastic band binding mommy and daddy, and we feel this tugging on the string on either side. And those are like thoughts and feelings, which we can't understand the thoughts because they don't make sense to us, but the feelings that we know.
Mhm.
And so we just know when to cry, because when there's something in one of our parents that's discordant, we cry. And so adults don't realize that their children are like spiritual warning devices for their own mental incongruencies.
Oh, that's right. I did hear about that. Yes,
Mm.
that's right. Like our children are here to teach us. That's insane. That's insane because to teach us about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And also vice versa. I think I often think that of, because I love all my children, all of them. Each one are very unique, and each one of them really do teach me a special aspect of myself, you know. But my daughter, because I have 6 kids, so I have one daughter out of 5 boys. I love all my boys. But my daughter, I feel it hit me so hard, Franklin. I feel that she came back to, like, it's me coming back to myself at a point in my life where I needed the mother who I am now back then when I was a young girl, because I see my daughter and it's like me, I'm an air sign, she's a fire sign, but everyone says, oh my gosh, that's your twin, this and that, whatever, but I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I pour into all of my children, but I pour even more to her, because she's like the only girl. I was the only girl I had one brother, one older brother, Alex, may rise in power, but I was raised around 9 boys, boy cousins, very tight family. I think that was like kind of the last phase of my life where our family was really, really tight, as it should be, right? And then everybody just tends to separate, go their own lives, but whatever the case is. But the fact that, she's like the only girl in here in amongst so many boys, I pour even more to her, and it's so healing. It really is so healing. So as I'm trying to still fix you know, um, a lot of past childhood trauma, through her is where I get a lot of my healing as well. Even if I'm unable to directly try to heal where that pain came from, but at least through her, she's like a special connection that through her, she does help me to heal while I am on this spiritual journey. Do you see that a lot with people? Do they make that connection with their own children?
I have seen it, and I do, but not. I don't think it's as common as what it should be, because, and I don't like to blame the people. You know, this world is not an easy world to be
Right.
a parent in.
That's right.
So it's very easy to be sort of consumed by the day to day and not really focus. I mean, there are some great parents. I'm lucky. I know some really great parents. Like my partner, Eleanor, she's a really great parent. And
Shout out
I've
to
known,
Eleanor. Shout out to Eleanor for sure.
yeah, she's been a single mom, and she's poured all her everything into her teenager, who's become a really, you know, intelligent and lovely person. So, you know, imagine having a teenager that's 17 and the last thing they want is to smoke and drink and take drugs. The last.
That's right.
They'd rather go for a walk in the
Mhm.
woods. I mean, that's so
Right.
switched on.
Exactly. Exactly. I know that is it's very rewarding, and I would like to think that as I'm going through this journey of mine, and I learned to be more obedient to spirit, I have more self-love for myself, that my children pick that up. And it does. When we're talking about energy transfer, that's exact. I mean, it's universal law, you know. And they said that if in a home where, the children are the happiest when the mother is the happiest, even if you have both parents in the home, even if you have both parents who are equally yoked, right? Who are equally yoked, but the happiness of the children really depends on the happiness of the mother, because there's that maternal connection, that it's eternal, so I would like to think that, as I'm on this journey and I'm being obedient and I'm doing these things and I have my mind right, I have my heart right, I am a reflection of my values and things like that, that my children pick that up, and that they do, my kids, when they go out there, because I had first started to homeschool my children, because it was very difficult, just as you say, I was able to homeschool them for a few years, but I had to go back because I was the sole provider. I was really stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I feel that I instilled enough like morals into them, so that when they do confront, obstacles outside, that they know how to approach it. And that's exactly and they've learned a lot because of it too, right? Because it's like social, skills. They develop these other social skills when they interact with other children, and then they also see, oh my gosh, this kid is screwed up, this other kid is screwed up, and he's my same age, like, what's going on with everybody? But then it makes them have a much more appreciation of their mom, their home, their lifestyle, and things like that. And that's very rewarding to me as a mother, and that just, I feel, is another aspect, when it comes to, the spiritual journey that people are on. It's like whatever's going on within, it's absolutely going to reflect without.
Yeah, especially boys. I don't know. I have the idea that boys are harder than girls to bring up, because
Really?
I could be wrong, but just like all the people I've known over the years, just because boys are inherently going to go looking for danger.
Well, true. It's in their nature. It's in their nature to
So,
do so.
so as a
Yeah,
parent, you're going to worry your butt off. Where girls are more sensible. That's what it is. Girls are much more sensible than
true.
boys.
It's true. No, it's very, very true.
Boys will do stupid things.
Absolutely right. Did you ever hear of that experiment that I forgot who ran it, but you can find it. You can find it on YouTube. and it was they had it on the news too, where they did this experiment where they took, I think it's like 10, 11, 12 year olds. They took girls in one house, and then they had another group of boys at separate homes, right? And the girls were just there to thrive. Like they had food for them, and they just had to thrive for like a week, or survive, right? But then they found out that the girls thrived. They ended up, coming together, and they entertained themselves, and they actually cooked, and they cleaned, and they did this, very young girls, like teenagers. And but then they found out with the boys at the end of the week, they almost killed each other. There was rival gangs. They didn't cook. They ran out of food because it was like chaotic. It was so chaotic.
That makes perfect sense. That's about right. Sounds about right. Yeah, I went to an all boys school, so I can completely relate. Um, and I think that brings us into an interesting point. The way the divine feminine has been repressed through religion, through ideology. I mean, the whole idea that we had to all be right-handed in our schools, and in our days, they used to beat us for using our left hands. They didn't want us connecting with that emotional power,
That's
going
right.
into the emotional energy, and really, because that's the source of the nurturing potential, is the emotions, the feelings, and that emotional intelligence that we don't really give much value to, or we haven't given enough value to in modern times, even though it's where we can learn stuff without knowing, you know just
Yeah.
feel and follow that instinct of natural intelligence. I call it the natural intelligence as opposed to the rational intelligence, where rational intelligence is exactly what it is. It's limited. It's great for certain things, but it's very limited. It's short-sighted, and it can only be good for what it's good for in that one particular phase. When you try and apply the same logic of thinking on a bigger scale, it starts to end up lost in little loops, where the divine feminine, it's sort of oscillates in such a way that it expands past boundaries and just keeps expanding. And so it's got that fundamental, sort of like a woman's body. A woman's body's got a built-in, it knows when the egg cells need to be washed out and when the next egg cells need to grow, where a boy's body doesn't have that. So when a boy's 16, he's crazy. He's literally clinically insane. He's like a dog on heat,
Yeah.
and he can't think straight. He can't rationalize. All he knows is he wants to have sex, and he just wants to have sex all the time. Where women
Mhm.
don't go through that nonsense because their bodies are naturally
Regulated.
regulated. Exactly. And so
Hmm.
this lack of regulation, I think, is a big part of the masculine condition. And
Hmm.
this is possibly why the divine feminine has been so suppressed, because it's our inner regulating clock, that emotional content. Because whatever we've got that's out of sync will come back to us as a feeling, and we'll have to go into the feeling and discover there's an underlying emotion, and that's what will be the healing. And so they've prevented us from healing and going into our deepest soul spiritual natures by causing us to repress our feelings and become overly rational in a logical world where everything has to be explained with logical answers, instead of leaving space for the infinite, which has no answer.
That's right. It's yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. That's that whole, like, when I was growing up, that whole, well, um idea where they put in boys' minds, where little boys don't cry, like, tough it up, man. And I understand, like, there's a time where to be tough, but the fact that they're not taught to regulate their emotions, that it's okay to have these feelings and stuff like that, is another reason why I think, men, a portion, not all, um don't really learn how important it is to tap into their divine feminine energy as well, because you have it within, you have it, and I have masculine. It's to bring that balance, you know, even though I think that men make better teachers, because they, just as you said, I feel they do work better with their logical mind. Like, that's why you always see men coming around, they're studious, they read books, and they love that. It's all like, I need to learn about this and da 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 da, as opposed to the divine feminine, where we just wake up like that. We just wake up and we get like these intuitive downloads, and we just naturally know certain things. We might not be able to put it into words, but we know these very deep spiritual um aspects of spirituality, and then we express it in different forms, and men tend to need to study a little bit more and dive into books, but it's very beautiful when when a divine masculine is on this journey to know himself, right? Because it's always about, I always say, like, the key here is to know yourself, know thyself, right? And I think it's a beautiful thing that when men in particular are on a spiritual journey, that they do really tap into their divine feminine side as well, because it goes hand in hand with healing any trauma from the past, especially if you have issues with women, or you have a mother wound, or you have a father wound, things like that. And men really aren't taught that. And no, and the thing is that I find it a lot, even in the spiritual community, or even outside, when I just meet people regularly, men especially have a huge problem with this. They think they're okay, and they probably go to therapy, whatever they can, but they really don't do that real deep spiritual work. It's about accountability, and that's the painful part. Going back to what we were saying, that's the painful part. And this is with women or men, is the real true work is extremely painful. It's not sweet, because you have to really come face to face with the darkest parts of who you are, right? In order to do real healing, and it takes accountability. It takes being absolutely, in raw truth with yourself, and be like, okay, this is where I'm failing. This is what I've done. Da 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 da. And people still have an issue with that.
Yeah, I think it's by design, honestly. Like the world that we've had to adapt to live in doesn't give us space or time for that, and doesn't attach any importance to it. And like when I explained to my parents when I was 15, and I said, look, I've checked it out, and university is a waste of my time. And my mom was like, what do you mean? I was like,
Very
no, I've
true.
looked at it. I've looked at the syllabus for psychology, because it's the only thing I'd be interested in studying. And honestly, it's a ridiculous waste of time. I could just study it better on my own. And I looked at the so-called syllabus that they want us to learn, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's like going to someone who spoke to someone who had read the book instead of just going to read the book yourself.
Right, exactly.
And I was just like, what is the point? Like getting that broken telephone of information, like this person interpreted that person's writings, who interpreted the original. That's all really great. Why not just read the blooming original and interpret it for myself, And I think we've been schooled into this way of thinking that we need to be in these boxes. And like one of the biggest boxes, I think, is the idea of reality. And this, this notion that we're in this physical reality. And I honestly don't think we're in a physical reality. Personally, I believe we're in an etheric reality that our consciousness turns into a physical experience. And so we're locked into this physical experience of an etheric reality because our consciousness identifies in the way it does with thought objects, and it objectifies everything that we're experiencing to become solid. But even our physics has discovered that the so-called solids aren't so solid.
That's right. Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's so true. I saw actually a documentary on that. Like the deeper they look into matter, they find out it's just space. It's crazy. It is so wild. It's so wild. And the fact that you bring that up, it's you go I've learned a lot. Just as you say, you saying we're having an etheric experience, which goes, I would say, hand in hand. Are you talking about what people call the matrix, like, that we're living in a simulation? Is that what you're alluding, like, what you're referring to as?
I think this physical reality that we take for granted is the matrix.
Okay.
And the moment
Okay.
we realize that we're not in a physical reality, that we're actually in an etheric reality, that our consciousness is turning it into a matrix, then we have the ability to do miracles.
I love that.
The nature of reality seems so fixed and solid, but when we really consider it, my idea is this: is that what we consider the physicality is a compression, it's a contraction, it's a contract. It's a contract that we've made within our own attitude towards life. And this is being compressed by the etheric. And the etheric is vastly greater than what we give the physical value for. And the etheric is also dimensionally and time-wise, there's more scope. There's a greater dimensionality presence within the etheric. And the etheric is being compressed by the astral, which is very much more abstract. So I see the astral as being the emotional divine feminine qualities that become objectively perceived by the etheric, which is the shape of things. So I see the etheric as being the form of reality, and the astral as being the energy that fills the form of reality. And so we've got this etheric form with this astral energy filling the form, and this astral energy that fills the form and the etheric form that binds the energy are a duality which is caused by the soul, what we call the causal body, polarizing. So in our Shushumna chakra, there's this polarization that runs through the rest of our chakras until it gets to the Muladhara, the base chakra, and it becomes singular again. And so this fundamental structure of polarizing and then becoming singular seems to be a pattern within the universe. And so I see this reality as being, we think of it as 3 dimensions, but I see us living in the 4th dimension, because 3 dimensions doesn't account for change. It doesn't account for time.
That's
and
right.
Like, if we consider 3 dimensions, it's just a fixed shape. In the same way that 2 dimensions, you need to have almost infinite layers of 2 dimensions to create a 3 dimension. And if you are experiencing 2 dimensionality in a 3rd dimension, you're moving through the pages, sort of like a flat animation. And so to be moving through the 3rd dimension, there must be almost seemingly infinite layers of 3 dimensions in order for us to be able to move from one 3 dimension to another, to another, to another. And we call this flow through these 3-dimensional possibilities time. And each moment is a different 3-dimensional reality, because they're taking form around us, and we are in this infinite soup of 3-dimensional possibilities. And so that's the etheric field, which is essentially this time manifesting itself. And when we go from that into the etheric proper, where we're actually transcending the etheric, then we're going into a hyperdimensionality where there are all these different timelines. And so we're then in the multiverse proper. And that's like a scalar version, in the same way that from a 2-dimension to a 3-dimension, you have to have almost infinite layers of 2-dimension to make a 3-dimension. From 3-dimension to 4-dimension, you have to have almost infinite layers of the 3-dimension to make the 4th dimension, which creates the possibilities of time. But then from the 4th dimension to the 5th dimension, which is the etheric field proper, you've got to have almost infinite different timelines compressed. And then you move from that infinite forth into the astral field, which is so abstract that there's different universes. That now we're not just in the multiverse, now we're in something else, where they're not all versions of this reality. There's a billion different kinds of reality, each with a multiverse of its own. That's the scalar dimensionality of the sixth dimension and how vast it is. And at that point, we can literally shift into other types of reality. And then what we consider the seventh dimension, as I see it, would be that soul that attaches itself for experience, that is beyond all of these things, like this, what we call the truly infinite, eternal presence, the seat of the soul. And so I see all of these things as compressing into each other, and they create compression. And then on the physical, we're like this tiny compressed thing with all these different layers of energy compressing us into this stuck mode, where like it's stuck as this form, where actually it's not this form, but it feels stuck because it's been compressed by so many different forces. And so we become sort of dependent and addicted to this feeling of helplessness, which I think in a way represents this physical experience, is the fact that we are completely prone to the forces of nature, instead of that the forces of nature are an expression of our own consciousness.
It's I'm trying to wrap my head around that, but I get it. I get it. It's as if the body, although we've been charged to take care of it, but the body is really so, like, the flesh is so limited. Our body is so limited in this 3D, right? And this 3D, as you had said before, it's let me say, I wrote it down. Give me a second. You had said that it is it doesn't allow for too much change, this 3D, right? It's meant to, it's kind of like it, well, not kind of. There is a theory that, and I say theory because there's so many broad perceptions of it, that it is made to enslave us here, right? And it's always trying to trigger us in a way to kind of keep us here, as opposed to really evolving. It's like a trap. It's like, keep us from evolving spiritually and learning about all of these different scopes, as you had said, which is the name of the show, right? The kaleidoscope, right, of spiritual awakening, which is essentially what you had just described right now, with all of these different layers compressing and creating this 3D and all of these multiverses. Because we hear that more now than ever, about these multiverses and how we can access them through even our dreams, which that's a whole other world, and I know that's a whole other topic. But when you're talking about compression, and I think about compression, I think about when you compress coal to a point where there's a spark, and then it turns into a diamond, right? And I think, kind of, maybe, if it makes sense, that's what goes on with us as a human being here in this form, right? Because we know that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But I think all of this trauma and these things that we go through here in this 3D, it's made to put pressure on us. And that's why the world is so chaotic, to see what we form into under this pressure, right? Do we get crushed by it, or do we turn into, do we have that spark and become, that magician to create this magic? We become that diamond. We become this we finally come into alignment, right, with who we truly are, even though if we don't understand it at such a deep level as I know other people understand it, as you understand it, because like I said, I'm not a studious person. I'm led by spirit. And then later on, a lot of experiences confirm, hey, you're right. Everything that you're going through is because of this, because of it, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, So, and I think that's what, when you get to a particular level in your walk, in your journey, you're able to look back and reflect and have gratitude for that pressure, for that trauma, for everything that you went through in order to get to where you are right now. I think for me, that's a win. For me, that's a win. What do you
I
think,
always,
Frank?
I always say that to be fully great, one has to be grateful,
That's right.
because full
Absolutely.
greatness is gratefulness, and it's like it's people don't understand. You want to learn to manifest. Forget all the nonsense you think you've heard. What you become grateful for is what you're going to attract more of.
Oh my gosh.
The
That's
more you
facts
become
right
grateful
there.
for something, you're gonna attract more of it. So all you got to do is look around and say, oh, thank God I got this. Wow, I'm so lucky I got this. Wow. Suddenly you got more of it. Oh wow, I've got more to be grateful for till you got an abundance. And then that abundance becomes an abundant gratefulness, which generates more full greatness within us to attract all those things we're grateful for. And the
That's
ironic
right.
thing is that when we're the opposite of grateful, we push all those things away.
Right.
You could be in a loving relationship with the most perfect person in the world. You're not grateful for them. Start taking them for granted. Next thing you lose them.
That's right.
You lose that
Mm-hmm.
wonderful feeling and that person in your life. So, it seems like it's a recipe. And you mentioned the matrix, and this makes me think, this is not something that I think I've mentioned anywhere specifically. Have I? I don't know. Maybe I have. I think I've mentioned it once. Okay, so with my an ex in England, this is like 2013. We accidentally imbibed. I don't want to say too much words, but let's just say the lysergic, right?
Mm-hmm.
The dithalamine, and that entheogenic substance. And anyway, her ex-boyfriend used to be someone who people would talk to about getting a lot of that. And so he
Mm-hmm.
had some crystals, because it comes in a crystal form. And he had broken down the crystal, and then you've got to make the crystal proof, because one crystal is like thousands of drops. Tiny crystal
Mm.
like this is thousands of drops. Then you got to
Mm-hmm.
put that into a liquid, and you got to make that right so that it's the right amount of drops. So anyway, we got the bottle confused, and it was like there was like 8, 10 drops, but it actually it's like more like 100.
Oh.
And I washed it all out into a glass, and there were going to be 5 of us. And in the end, there weren't 5 of us. I had like maybe more than half of it, a lot of it. And my ex had like a quarter of the glass, but that was already for her about like 30. And for me, it was to be about 60. So anyway, we were vomiting for about an hour in the
Oh my
beginning.
gosh.
And like it was intense. But then what happened was she kept going catatonic, and I was slapping her to keep her in her body, because I was present enough to be aware, like, no, she mustn't go to sleep now, no catatonic nonsense. So I was like slapping her and putting water on her to keep her awake. And then
Oh my.
she'd wake up, she'd be so intense, and then she'd literally be sucked out of her body. And I would go after her. I would travel out after her, and I would go and find her and pull her back into her body.
Wait,
And
are you
then,
talking ethereally, like, in the
yes,
spirit?
and the astral, not the ethereal, right through the astral. And I would pull her back
But
into her body, and I'd open my eyes, and she'd look into my eyes, and she'd scream, and she'd get pulled out of her body, and I'd go and find her. And so this was happening a lot, and I was like, then it got to the point where she was out there, and I stopped, like, and I was like, where the hell are we? Like, I thought I knew it all, I thought I'd seen it all, but this is a new thing. And there were these like lines going everywhere, and there were these like electronic spiders. It's the only way I can describe them. And they were like a chicka 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 chicka, and they were like writing code on these lines. And I was like, wow. And I'd bring her back, and she'd be screaming. And later on, when she was more aware, she was saying to me, what were those electronic spiders that we kept seeing? And what were they writing? And I'll never forget that. Like, because we both experienced the same reality, right? Like, and it must have been at least about 12 times or more that I had to fetch her. And there were other entities, there were all sorts of things going on, because we were like really high. I ended up having to go into a very deep trance, and I think I chanted mantra for about 4 hours to create like a bubble around us, because all these beings are like coming, and they wanted to mess with her. And I was like, no, 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 no. So I got into a posture and started cranking out mantra, and I went into a very deep trance. And so that for her became like a very powerful, she saw what sound can do, how powerful sound can be to create like a bubble, you know. But I'll never forget those electronic spiders, and I only saw that with her. And I mapped a lot of astral and etheric realms in my life and training and stuff. But that was like, I think that was like something else. And I think that now we're talking about that matrix reality. The thing that got me was the electronics. Like, we're out of our body, we're so far out, and I'm like, excuse me, electronics? Wasn't expecting that.
yeah, it sounds a lot like what people say, that kind of like what's beyond this 3D, even past 4 or 5, even past is AI, you know, and then AI manifests itself here, like, you know, our robotic world, our electronic world, everything that we see online, you know, so that is wild.
I think it's why we're scared of spiders.
Also, that's so funny that you say that. We have a question in the chat, but before we get to that question, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I have a fear of spiders, but it's not a big fear. You know, it's, you know, but anyway, but my brother, he had, many, many years ago, he had gotten a tattoo of a black widow right on his throat, right? And when you think about it, it's very spiritual, because that's the throat chakra. The black widow, like, really, which it really, you know, I understand it now more on a spiritual level, and you know, and what went on in his life and things like that. But he did say, we had this conversation, it's part of one of our last conversations before he ascended, is he told me there's a dream that he would always have, that he'd be out of nowhere, and he would feel like a spider web, like a string of spider web on his face. But he didn't know what that was, right? But it was always a freaking spider. He goes, I would love to know. And I know my brother was very deep spiritual thing, and think always into, deep spiritual thought and things like that, And he goes, I would love to know what that is, And I would say maybe 3 months ago, it was right before the fall. And I even took pictures and I had posted it. There's this garden spider. This sucker was big. I would say maybe much bigger than the circumference of a $50. Okay. And that's what his legs tucked in. Okay. And I knew it was a boy. It was called a garden spider, but then it's also called a pumpkin spider. But anyway, it made a web right in front of my entrance. I have double doors, and on the door that we don't use, it made a huge web, and that was its home. And it was just chilling there. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I didn't get rid of it. I didn't touch it. I think I might have brought it up to you at one point, right? So I was okay. I left it. It would go away, and I'd come back, and the kids were fascinated. I take pictures of it. I made it a star on Instagram, whatever. So, and I was like, there's something. The reason why this thing is here, I don't know why. I just kept ignoring it. I'd come in, go out every day, do what I got to do, busy, doing stuff in the 3D, whatever. One day I walk out and I don't even bother, but I do see it on my peripheral, and there's something snagged on it. I get in my car and I was like, wait, what was that? Because, I'm so busy doing things. And I said, no, let me pay attention. I get back out of my car and I look at the web, and there's a very dark gray feather snagged on it. And just before that, I was thinking about what my brother was telling me about his dream. And I said, okay, a feather of all things caught in that damn web. There's a feather caught in it. I said, okay, it's telling me something. I like my instincts it's trying to tell you something. What is it? I kind of looked it up. I paid attention to some dreams, and it was just like, it was a warning for something. I'm not gonna go out there and it'll get like a little too weird right now if if I put it out there. But just as you shared that dream and how strange it was like almost like you entered into a it's like you entered into a how would I say? You entered into like a particular dimension, and it's kind of like you weren't supposed to be there, but then you ended up there, and it's kind of like the reason why you had to put that protection around you and, your friend at the time. And then that's exactly what the energy that I got from that spider and the feather caught in the web. It was like the same thing. It was a sign of protection, or yeah, it was just a sign for protection at that time. And that's exactly what I had to do. I did put like this, I had meditated, and I put this energy, protection of energy around me and my home, my children, and things like that. And and I got confirmation, and that's exactly what it was. So it's wild that I make that connection. And that was the result of, right? With the connection with the spider, it's some type of protection that it's kind of like, alluding to, like, hey, something's going on, whatever the case is. But it's wild because, you just reminded me of that, which is very crazy.
Yeah, feather in a web. Yeah, it's this fear of spiders is the most irrational thing when we think about it. Something I've noticed as well, like with creatures, like I've never had a problem with snakes. So I'm pretty sure I'm quite more immune than most people to snake bites.
Right.
Because like I'm not at all traumatized by snakes. In fact, I find them quite interesting. I find them quite funky. I like the way they move. I'm like, hey,
Me too.
you're on
Me too.
fire. Look at them busting the groove, Like it's like they're dancing to consistent invisible music that you just wish you could hear.
But
And that's just the way
the
they
whole
go.
See, I'm not afraid of snakes either, but once I start learning more about like this, about spirituality and things like that, that's the kundalini. Like, like that's what, like that whole journey is about, right? Raising the kundalini, raising your consciousness, balancing, all that is within, and raising your awareness and things like that. So it makes sense not to be afraid of snakes.
And then I think about a spy door.
Oh,
and it sort of makes me think, what is a spy door? Why are we scared of spy doors? And they build these wonderful webs. It's like a staircase leading off somewhere. If you really like observe these webs, they're like a funnel. It's like a toric field. They're literally building the structure of a toric field.
Mm-hmm.
Look at their webs. It's
Exactly.
incredible when you really look at what they're doing. And so I've often considered, myself, I've had fear of spiders, not fear of snakes, not fear of big animals, not fear of. I've been more afraid of a little spider than a charging bull. It doesn't seem rational. Like literally, I'd rather in my life I'd rather face down, and I have, like, on a lot of occasions had to face down and stare into the eyes of a charging bull than just pick up a spider, and but I've been training myself. I got bitten on my testicle once by a little spider that was like a real wake up call. I was like, actually, you know what? Maybe I should get bitten more often. And I was like, that was good. Like, retrospectively, it was a good experience. Like, because now I'm less scared. And so I have spiders living in my home. I actually don't disturb the spiders. I actually leave the window open for them, and I get these big spiders, like just about the size of my hand, that will come into my place, and they'll be above me on the ceiling, and I'll like go to sleep. And so I got bitten here in my sleep about a few weeks ago.
Oh my gosh,
And I remember in my sleep, I actually remember, was like something in my face, and I remember doing this, and then I remember waking up and, gosh, my hand's sore, and I was like asleep, and in my sleep I was rubbing the sore and itchy, and then I woke up at some point in the night. I was like, damn it, man, it's sweating, it's itchy, it's sore. I was like, oh, I got bitten by a spider. That's what that funny feeling was. Something's on my face, and my hand on my face, and that funny feeling on my hand. So anyway, but what I took away from it was, that wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
Okay. I can rock it. Because I didn't re-traumatize by it.
Right.
Wasn't a problem. And I can still feel the effects of the poison here to this day, weeks later.
Yeah, because it's neuro. Yeah, it's a neurotoxin.
I'm not quite sure what toxin it was. I think it might have been a different kind of toxin.
Oh,
I think it might have been
right. Yeah, well, true, very true.
It wasn't very painful. I actually thought it might have been the necrophilic toxin, which is what causes the infections.
Right.
But I put bentonite clay on it the next day just to draw out excess poison, and I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to be worried. And I eat well. I eat good food. I like to start the day off with a smoothie and fruit. And if you keep your body healthy, then your body should be able to deal with most poisons.
Right. Oh my gosh.
We don't realize how powerful our bodies are.
Yes, and they are.
Like, if we aren't afraid of the toxins of an animal, then they shouldn't hurt us. And I think fear is that's the fundamental bugger when it comes to keeping us away from the spiritual domain. Our fear of ourselves, our fear of danger, our fear of whatever our fears are. Fears are this sort of container that we live in that prevents us from experiencing the infinite. And so the moment we start facing our fear, and this is a very shamanic thing, like a lot of my shamanic training was like, just do crazy things, like really bloody crazy things, like the kind of things adrenaline junkies would do, And in that, you get to experience fear and face your fear and go, you know what? Like, why was I afraid?
Right.
What was really going on? We think we know what it is, but there's always something else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a huge, I feel that fear does serve its purposes. I think it serves its purposes as far as survival, like as opposed to really listening to your instincts. If you're in a particular situation, like if you're out like in the woods or something, you're confronted with like a large beast or something, a wolf or a bear or something, the fear helps you to react. Like, I mean, I'm saying if you have a understanding of how it's supposed to work, right? So it's like it kicks in your survival instincts and things like that. But then of course, you have this other aspect of fear where it prevents you from really, you know, um, leveling up as far as your spiritual journey. You know, it's happened to me, like when kind of like when that cognitive dissonance starts breaking away and you start breaking out of that programming, like the fear is unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And I didn't have a mentor to help me work through it. I didn't have a wonderful shaman as yourself. Like, I go to you like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going through. I have to deal with it myself. And one thing I learned on how to combat that fear is to really just center yourself and just invoke that spirit of love. Just embrace it with love, and that's how you're able to push through it, for sure. But let me just answer this question here. Sirius, hey, what is up, Sirius? He's out. I think he's out in Africa too. I can't remember. But Sirius asks, how do we end being reincarnated? This is an endless different scenarios playing out. So, how do we end being reincarnated?
I've got a very left field perspective of all of this. Like, so I think of it as this, like, remember I was talking about these dimensionalities.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the etheric field as being all this infinite timeline potentials.
Mm-hmm.
And all these infinite timeline potentials I see as being like a multiverse where we exist within this multiverse. And it's an almost infinite spectrum of possibilities and different versions of ourselves with different choices and different things. But
Right.
the past and the future are bound in these connections between all of this. So when I think of the past and the future, I don't think of the past as something that has happened or the future as something that will happen. I see it as like we're existing now here in all sorts of phases. And some of the phases that we're existing in now, we will experience in the future. And some of the phases that we're existing in now, we seem to have experienced in the past, but it's all now. So it's like, imagine you've got like 50 trillion possibilities, things that could be happening right now.
Right.
But you're only picking one of those as the event of the present. And another one of those you're picking as an event in the future, and another one. So I see the ancestral lineage of the future and the past as being connected in the present, so that we already are living our future selves now. So this idea of past lives and future lives, I see them as being, we don't just exist in this one body. We exist in a multitude of versions of ourselves currently, and some of those versions are the future, some of those versions are the past, and some of those versions are other versions of lives. But we're existing in all of them now. This is why we can connect with our ancestors now and sense our ancestors from the past and commune with them and communicate with them, or sense our ancestors from the future and commune with them. But the past and the future are a human design. It's part of a human sort of creation in this matrix of a rational singular timeline, which seems to go A, B, C, D, E. But when we go into a deep trance, and you will know this, we get premonitions from the future. Now, how can we be getting premonitions from the future if it's not happening now?
Mm.
Some part of us is accessing the now, which is yet to be in the future, which is that future self. So it's like our future self is giving us a heads up now. And we're getting this information from our future self, which is next to us, as is our past self next to us. So when I think of reincarnation, it's already happened. It's already happening. And I think that we're in this infinite spiral of different versions of ourselves, and some of them are different lives. However, like the idea of this, how do we escape reincarnation? I don't think there is a way to escape it per se. There is just a way to put all of these different versions together into one. It's like when we put all these different future, past selves into one thing, then we exist throughout all time. Then we are like what would be called omnipresent.
Omnipresent, right?
And then we are experiencing the future and the past simultaneously. And then we are in that high level of wisdom where we know everybody's past and everybody's future and every potential. So I see it as like there's that potential of consciousness to be able to be expressed through our personal experience when we move into understanding and bringing all the hyperdimensional states of consciousness into a single coherent state of being, instead of how we move from phase to phase through our journey. And it's almost like we're putting together pieces of a puzzle, and we're looking at one piece of the puzzle, and this is my past self, and we're looking at another piece of the puzzle, and this is my future self. And all these puzzle pieces are our ancestral lineages where we've reincarnated. But when we put the whole puzzle together, then we've got all of them in front of us and we can see the bigger picture. And then we aren't reincarnating per se, because we're just conscious of all different timelines.
So let me see if this is how I'm interpreting it, but I'll ask it in a question form. So it's not so much as reincarnate, even though people, right? There are people that do believe in reincarnation. It's not so much as reincarnation. So although, so you're saying not to get caught up with, oh, I don't want to reincarnate into this life, because in actuality, even though we leave this body in this reality, when we ascend, we're still existing somewhere else. So it's inevitable. So don't get caught up with the whole reincarnation thing. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. We're in this whole paradigm, and there's so many versions of ourselves here, and we think that we're just localized here. But if we go into our ancestral DNA, we'll recognize pasts and futures, but then we'll also recognize that all of them build an aggregate of something more, which is hyperdimensional, which is
I love that.
much more than what we are, or much more than where we are.
I like that. I like that idea, because we do, well, at least I do, right? I get caught up with the idea, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go through this again, and da 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 da. And then I get so caught up here with the 3D, like, what do I have to do, whatever the case is. But deep down, I've always felt like it really isn't that way. Like I exist, in other, dimensions. And I'm here, or I acknowledge this one right now at this moment, because this is where I am right now, and I think I have to get to a particular point in my healing and in my spiritual journey where I free myself from that box thinking, right? And just reach a level where I know my power. I know who I am. This is I cannot limit myself only to this reality, because I'm so much more than this. And I think that now in these other realities where I actually exist, I think that that's like my goal as well, like to learn. It's always like a learning process. This is why they say, like, this spiritual journey, it's a never ending journey. It's like whether you're experiencing here or in another reality, which is wild, you know so and not to take into account of, like, DNA and how all that works and everything like that. But I think that's a beautiful, beautiful concept. It really is, because it kind of alleviates a lot of the fear, like, oh my gosh, okay, you know I'm doing what I need to do here, and I need to just embrace the fact that, hey, that once I'm done with this, and I definitely absolutely exist somewhere else, because my own dreams, my own dreams even confirm it as well, which is wild, you know. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's absolutely a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, that was one of the problems that my dad had, because I was living in multiple timelines as a child.
Mm,
And after I drowned, just reality just wasn't the same again. It was never going to be the same, because that, like, literally the universe unraveled and my memories were all taken from me. As like this, everything unravels really fast. As
mm-hmm,
it vibrates faster and faster. You literally, all your memories, everything gets taken out of you,
mm,
and you unravel, and then you're not who you were. You're something different more, and you go like, "Oh my gosh,
mm,
that wasn't me. Oh wow, what was that? Why was I there?" Funny thing was, when I drowned, the first thing I realized when I was actually crossing over was like, "How did they get me to come here?" That was what I was thinking. I was 3 years old, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, what is that place? Oh, thank God I'm going home. Oh, home. Oh, wow. How did they get me to go there?" Like, there was this distinct recognition that somehow I'd been tricked into being here.
mm,
And then I could see them going to fetch my body, and I was like, "Oh no, 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 no." It was like far away. And then I had to go all the way back down there, and I couldn't stop them from going to get me out of the swimming pool and doing resuscitation to me. And after that, I was living in Japan as an adult. So I would go to sleep at night and I'd be living as an adult in Japan. And then I'd wake up and I'm in this small body again. It was really confusing. And I'd speak to my dad. I said, "Dad, I'm living in two worlds." My dad was like, "Okay." He was a good listener. He was a good listener. He was like, "Okay." I was like, "You see, I live in this place. I've got armor. I've got a sword. This is my name. I'm like a general. I've got like my men, and I'm like a soldier. I'm a warrior." And then he'd ask me, "So, like last night when you were sleeping?" "Yep, it was there. I got killed again, Dad." He was like, "What do you mean you got killed?" "It's the same way I get killed every time.
every time, right? Oh my
Every
gosh.
time I relived that death thousands of times. It felt like thousands of times as a child." And my dad was like, "This is horrendous." I was like, it was like, "How did you die?" I was like, "I was cut in half, Dad." Like, with an uppercut from a daikatana. And anyway, bottom line was, like, it was what struck me then was about how it wasn't the past, it was the present. So,
Mhm.
like, and it was very confusing to me, because I was living in two places. With my eyes closed, I was living there. With my eyes open, I was living here. And then this past life, future life, whatever you want to call it, has been a big part of my journey throughout my life. And it got really difficult for me in about 99, 98. Oh gosh, 98, it got really hard for me, because um I saw a ship, and I was like, "Holy shacks, I was a slaver. Oh no. That's something to take on board." Like, what was I
Wow.
doing? I was like carrying people in my ship, you know? And that was like, "Oh my God, what does this mean about me?" Like, what kind of a person am I
Right.
really? Like, what have I done, like, in my life? And it was like really hard for me to reconcile that there were these parts of me, and then like lots of other parts in different places. And Then there were older memories of like where I didn't have a human body, and I was like, oh gosh, this like I'm like a giant or something, right? And we were like,
Oh, you've had those dreams too? I've had a dreams like that too.
yeah,
Or like, well, mine came as a revelation of a dream, but it felt so real. Like I couldn't even distinct the difference between where I was then and where I am now.
yeah, it's quite disorienting. I mean, I would dance, and then I would leave my body when I danced, and I would like,
Oh, okay.
and then
Mm-hmm.
I'd be there, and then I'd be like experiencing, and then I'd be like suddenly back in my body, and I'm like, where? What's my body doing? You know, maybe, like my body's all over the show. It's apparently been dancing like on auto, you know, just hit auto
Mm-hmm.
play while I go on a vacation kind of thing. And but it's very much like a waking dream. That's I don't really dream. I dream when I'm awake. Funny thing, like if I want to dream, I actually have to set an alarm to dream.
Really?
I have to lie down, go to sleep, set an alarm, and then just as I wake up, I'll have a quick dream while I'm sort of like awake. Sort of, it's like weird as that sounds. Um, for me, that's like how I dream. Like if I want to dream, um, I like that's how I dream. Although sometimes I do have like I don't know if I can call them dreams. Just information comes to me in my sleep, and it's very abstract, like completely abstraction. But more like I'm just sort of aware of things in my sleep, and I wake up knowing that this has happened in my sleep, and this is what I'm aware of, and this is what you know. Um, like I woke up one morning having to get out of Sri Lanka because there was a tsunami coming.
Oh, what was a tsunami?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Had to rush to get out of the country, got out of the country a day before the tsunami, or arrived in the UK the day before the tsunami. So like I woke up and I was just like, oh, that damn tsunami's coming, like it's coming soon. When's it coming? I'm not quite sure exactly. It's coming like soon, like quickly get a flight ticket, get out of here, like
Oh my goodness.
telling people there's a tsunami coming, and people just look at you and nod, you know, oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
Well, listen, there's there's so much um that we go through when we're on this spiritual journey and having these spiritual awakenings. Yes, we spoke about how it's scary and and things like that, but at the same time, like the like the leveling up that we get when it comes to our intuition, right? Our psychic abilities, the power of honesty, instant manifestations. This is where you were talking about before, how we could create magic. This is the other side of it. This is the other side where you kind of enjoy it in a way. Sometimes it's good, and then sometimes it's like, but these are the consequences thereof, you know and that's extremely powerful, like this heightened awareness. You do go through many different identity shifts, when you go through the spiritual awakening, which I think it connects to people kind of like changing their names, because I've gone through a couple of name changes and things like that, but it's all identity shifts, and it's all like different aspects of me, you know, and but at the same time, in the spiritual journey, you crave authenticity, which is very hard to come by. You know what I'm saying? But I think it's all in all, I think it's a huge blessing that comes along, when you're in this when you're really on this journey and doing it for real, doing the spiritual work for real, within, you know, and I think it's beautiful. I really, really think it's beautiful and very, it raises a lot of wonderful, beautiful emotions inside, and the connections that you also create with other people as well, because then at the same time you don't feel like you're by yourself. You don't feel alone, because there's a time where you go through a lot of isolation because of it, because nobody understands you. And this is why I say you crave for authenticity. So in my case, it's why I created this platform, but then now I see its purpose, helps me to connect people with you and the other my other spiritual family, in our circle and things like that. And it's very, it's so beautiful, and it really helps to, like I said, it helps you on your healing journey, and to feed that vibration of gratitude even more.
Yeah, I agree. And there's something a guy said to me in Sri Lanka in 2000 and the end of 2001, December, about the 20th of December, or was it early in 2002? No, it was before New Year's Eve. And I met this guy in Hikkaduwa because I'd gone to Hikkaduwa. I was living in Sri Lanka for a year and a half, and I knew these guys, local guys who used to drum, and I'd go and drum with these guys, and we just drum and drum and drum, and it was like really, we'd drum for like days. If I went to visit them, I'd just hang out at their place and we just drum, just wouldn't stop drumming. And these guys were amazing drummers. And there was this one French guy I met, and he was really switched on guy. And something he said a number of times stuck with me. And he said, "It's all about the people we meet along the way." And I think
Ah,
that
love
defines the
that.
spiritual journey. Like as a one-liner, it is all about the people we meet along the way. I think true spirituality is not so much about ourselves as it is about the us in other people and them in us.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. That's where our biggest shifts happen, is when we do come across other people, whether it's, relationships with our family, right? Thus, which is why we're born into, right? Into the family that we have, friendships, lovers, things like that. That's where I think the biggest spiritual shifts happen, is in that connection, is that merging of energies, you know with other people that bring us where we are right now in this journey as well. And I think that's absolutely beautiful, Franklin. And what a beautiful way to help bring this to a close. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know it's still a little later for you. It's still midday for me. Any closing thoughts, Franklin? Any closing thoughts to anyone who's watching here today?
I'm thinking about a track that I channeled like many years ago after a breakup, and it's about what real love is, and
Mm.
it's called Soulmate. You might have heard it.
What's the name
And
of it?
Soulmate.
Oh,
Have you not heard it?
have I played it? I played so much of your songs on my show.
It's not on my YouTube yet. I should put it on my YouTube.
If it's not on your YouTube, then no, I have not. I have not played it.
It's actually on my SoundCloud somewhere.
Okay,
Uh,
I'll look it up.
but um, yeah, it basically is the gist of it is when we see ourselves in another,
Mm.
and we recognize that what's within them is actually us, and we recognize that what's within us is actually them.
Mm.
It's this what true love is. When you fall in love with someone, it's like you see the best parts of yourself inside of them and the best parts of them inside of you.
Oh,
And so I do think that the word love, being representative of the word life, is truly the power, the most powerful spiritual power that there is. I remember being in the pit like once when I like another time when I thought like, okay, flesh puppet, hang it up, done. I thought I was done for. I couldn't find my physical body. It seemed like I'd been out there for months, and I was like, gosh, my body must have like my heartbeat stopped when I left my body. That it's been months since I've been in my body. I didn't realize how time compression worked in different dimensionalities. And so, anyway, at some point the fear came, and they came for me. And anyway, long story short, I went down the spiraling thing with all of these like fractal versions of these beings, which you might call the archons, and they're like made out of smaller ones and smaller ones and smaller ones, but they're making up big beings. And the archangels are made out of smaller angels, are made out of smaller ones, and the archons are the same structure of fractal condensation of consciousness and beings, and it's like they're all actually us. It's quite a heavy experience. And then getting to that bottomless thing, and I'm facing this changes every time you observe it. It's something new. It's like, wow, I can't quite keep track of you. Like, just exactly who are you? And wants to be us, wants to experience, wants to become us, possess us.
mhm.
And the more you fight it, the stronger it gets, until you feel compassion and you start loving. And still you actually feel, wow, so this is what you do. You hang out in this place. You do this to people. Shame. It's like really sad. Like, I feel for you. And suddenly it lost its hold of power. And then the more you feel love for this being, the more it transforms, and it becomes that other one, like they wrote the Bible about. And then it's like within your heart, you're like, oh my gosh, so you're the same being as that being. That's a bit of a head trip. And
Mm.
so I think like we don't realize how much power is in love. Um, I've had like bulls charging me. I've looked into a creature's eyes with love just before it offs me, and they don't off you. You know, I've done it a lot of different creatures in my life because I lived in the jungles. So we don't realize the power of love is the most powerful thing in the universe. And unfortunately, Hollywood has sold us a crock of lies. All love really is when we recognize that within the other human being is us. That's why you don't want to hurt anybody, because you're hurting yourself. That's why you'd rather help somebody, because you're helping yourself. And even though we are individuals, we are actually part of a group.
I absolutely love that, Franklin. I really, really do. So you said that, you were confronting uh an animal, but it really doesn't do anything, right? And
Yeah.
it really doesn't do any, like, it didn't off you, but then you just think about it. Go ahead, go ahead.
And a human once. I walked past a man in a crowd, and I accidentally saw into his mind that he had murdered someone. And
My gosh.
it was just accident. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just walking past him, and suddenly I went into his consciousness and I saw it all happen. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy killed someone. And I didn't say anything. And he turned around and he stared at me. He said, you're talking to me. I was like, I wasn't talking. I didn't say anything. I just looking at
Oh
him.
my goodness.
And then he came to me and he started trying to threaten me, and I didn't say anything. I didn't give away any of my power. I didn't say a word. And then he tried
Mm-hmm.
to attack me, and I just looked deep inside his eyes. And every time he tried to attack me, something would happen, and he would make himself lie on the floor. And then he'd get up and he'd try to attack me again. And I just look deep inside his eyes, and I'd see that place where he wants to hurt me, and I'd love that place. And then he'd make himself lie on the floor. It happened about 4 times. There was a crowd watching, and then he freaked out. He screamed at me. He was like, "Who? What are you? You get out of my head," or whatever, and he ran away. But so it's not just animals, humans too. It's actually an incredibly powerful occult presence, love, and we don't recognize it. Like, if you really truly love, I remember once being set on fire when I was deep in the trance of meditation, and there was the chance of being afraid, and I thought, oh, don't have time for fear. Don't have time for fear. And I didn't burn. My clothes burnt, my hair burnt, my beard burnt, but my body didn't burn. I didn't have any burns in me at all.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's
I had taken there was a huge bonfire, and he'd scooped up a whole lot of the red coals and the burning embers and the burning wood and burning fire, and just dumped it on top of my head.
what?
Like, and I mean these big things, like they're big. They're like, it's like a big metal disc container that you can literally
Cauldron, like
carry a
a
fire
cauldron
in.
type of thing?
And he did it because he was being possessed to do it. So, but in that moment, I didn't get afraid, and there was the chance of fear, but I decided, oh, I'm not going to be afraid of fire. And it's almost like we don't realize that, like, all the powers in the universe are sort of waiting within us, and the moment we transcend our fear, we can unlock everything in like one heartbeat.
It's like you have to also have a huge amount of courage also to love. Bravery. You have to be very brave to love. It's almost a little it's almost easier to like not be afraid, not to set into the, not to give into fear. Love is very difficult, but it does take a sense of courage, bravery, to really embrace it and become it, and I think that's why, it's just as we were talking about before, why it's so important to really have connections with other people, because this is where we learn this. This is where we learn um wonderful aspects of other people and how it reflects ourselves. And I think it's such a beautiful way to look at it. To look at the spiritual journey that we're on is these connections with other people as well. For sure, for sure. But Franklin, thank you so much. My goodness. Thank you for opening your heart and sharing your super unique experiences with us. Your friendship to me, your connection to me has absolutely blessed me in so many ways. I'm absolutely grateful to have you part of my inner circle, as far as like, well, my kids are my inner circle, but then my also an inner circle of people who I confide in and I absolutely trust. And I think your energy is amazing. And there's you honestly give so freely of yourself. We talk and I text you, and then we'll have conversations back and forth, and it's very rare to find that, someone who genuinely really takes their time out and say, hey, how you doing, and stuff like that. I have a very few amount of people that do that in my life, and I'm absolutely grateful that you are one of them, Franklin. And so again, thank you for this time. Thank you for sharing this space with me. I'm absolutely grateful for you, your kindness, your generosity with your time and with your energy, and unwavering support to us. And Love you so much, Franklin.
And right back at you. I feel 100% the same. Honored to know you, honored to be on your show. And I always love your energy as well. You're very real, you're very straight. And not everybody is straight and real. Everybody's got their own. We're living in a world of you know what it is.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you too, dear Moon Feather, and thank you for honoring me and bringing me into your show.
Yes,
And I enjoyed it.
absolutely.
Gosh, the
Yeah.
2 hours just flipped past. 2 hours and 10 minutes. We were only going
It,
to do it for an hour. What happened?
I know, no, but it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and you make it very easy. Honestly, you make it very, very easy to just get on and just talk with you. You really do. And as myself, I love to um embrace people and be open minded, and just give people the space that they need, and you do that as well, especially with me. And guys, I am going, my goodness, I'm going to show you how wonderful this entity that you see right here before you is. He wrote a song for me because he's also a musician. He's very unique with his songs, because he plays them once, he just hits record, he gets on there, sings, plays the guitar, and that's it. It's a one-time performance, and I'm so grateful that you have recorded the songs that you have. I've played them on my show, and the day that he came on and he's like, "Oh, here, Mooney, I made this song," and I'm like, "What?" It broke me down. Forget about it. Every time I think of it, it's now I cry with so much joy, because you could just feel, you know, um the emotion and the love that Franklin expresses in his music, especially for people he absolutely connects with. And I'm extremely grateful. And I'm gonna play that song now. It's like about 4 minutes or so, and I'm extremely grateful. And again, Franklin, thank you so much for this song. It will eternally be part of me. And thank you. I'm so grateful.
Sorry, I was muted. Well, thank you. And once again, you honor me and makes me a bit shy. But I don't get shy often, by the way.
I was gonna say, the shaman shy, really?
No, well, it's like I'm this giant now. I got to live up to this. Like, can't quite reach this.
Mm,
This.
but it's like I said, you make it very easy. Because you're just being very authentic, and I love you for it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dimini. I'm going to I will definitely look forward to another show with you.
Yes, yes, definitely, for sure, guys. Franklin, the shaman, Bush Whispers, link is in the description below. Catch him and on the roundtable on Saturday. Usually goes on 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find him in his LinkedIn is in the description. He's on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Guys, honestly, reach out to him and support and show you love. And thank you so much for spending your time with us, guys, for everyone who came into the chat. Sending you so much love, so much energy of health, wealth, prosperity, success, love, joy, peace to everyone. Until the next time, my dears, until the
Until the
next time,
next
I love you
time.
guys.
Bless you, and thank you all in the chat. Love to all of you, and much peace. Bless you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Much love to Josh and to Eleanor.
The moon verse inside your heart carries your world around, reflecting through the things you think you see. What is here? Binding these currents of living and dying, taking you through into divine, showing you what it is, just what you are. The moonverse, it wraps itself around your mind and heart, taking you back to the place before the start. A journey right through your heart, into the places within your skies, just where you see that it drifts perfectly. Moon feather and perfect skies, journey to the moon and back. Moon feather, those perfect eyes, take you on a mystical ride. Moon feather, gonna hold it wise, show you what's your guides within these endless mystic purple skies. In this moonverse, where we find just what we think we are, running in circles, running right from ourselves, till you can discover why you feel so low and high. Look into the moonverse that covers the shape of your heart. Look in the moonverse that covers the place where you are. Moon feather on perfect skies, on a journey to the moon and back. Moon feather with those purple eyes, take you on a mystical ride. Moon feather gonna tickle your heart till the truth comes clear. Moon feather with the mystic heart of beauty that can show you your heart designs. Moon feather on these perfect skies, on a journey to the moon and back. Mystical ride, you'd see your purple eyes revealed, taken into the stream. It's moon feather stroking your heart. Feel what is within. It's moonlight, show you what you. This moonverse is like a song that's written from inside, the endless poem that falls from trees like perfect leaves. The perfect poem that falls from trees like beautiful leaves. Moon feather on the mystic skies, journey to the moon and back. Moon feather gonna hold your guides, show you what it is you hold. Moon feather gonna take you there, on a mystical journey fair. Moon feather gonna show you where your heart is tickled thinking through. Moon feather gonna stroke your heart. Moon feather gonna touch your heart.